Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Berman. Welcome to the Cyberhero Adventure Show. So let me begin with a quick survey. How many of you, having seen that cool introduction, are disappointed by seeing this guy just sort of sitting here? But don't be, because if you can see over my shoulder here, that is actually a superhero costume. So if you stay tuned, maybe you'll see why my wife thinks I'm nuts. But I have a solution to that, which is to bring in people who know what they're talking about. Hey, Ron, how you doing?
Hey, pretty good. Wait, oh, you brought the wrong guy. You said know what they're talking about. You brought the wrong guy again.
All right, hold it. Okay,
Right.
I do the humor, you do the substance. That way we stay in our lanes.
But I didn't even shave, so I could be humorous today. Okay, I'll stay in my lane today. I'll be nice today.
Indeed. So how have you been?
Not too bad. I'm really excited to be here because it's you and I talked before about the Fido technology, and of course you were gracious enough to actually host a show about one of my favorite topics. I think it's something that I want to see really adopted through. I mean, not a huge adoption, just the world. And we'll start here, and we'll push that over to Mars and maybe over to Titan later. But
well, wait, then you're getting to my ecosystem in superhero comics, the digital universe, right?
That's right. So yeah, so that's the plan, that's the goal, and and of course, to do that, we need to have the best people out there as advocates for it, and to really educate and communicate it. And of course, we have a couple guests coming on today that are probably two of the brightest minds when it comes to Fido that I've ever seen. So I'm excited.
Well, hold on. We have some breaking news here. The average internet user has to juggle up to 90 passwords. What, are you kidding?
That sounds like a lot. And actually, you know what? I think the problem is they may juggle up to 90 passwords, but they also may reuse the same password 90 times, which of course, as we know, is 90 times worse. And then of course you're left to using password managers and things like that, which we do support. We obviously do like, people using single-use strong passwords. And of course, password managers have been coming under attack lately because of supply chain attacks. And, I think that it is time to start thinking differently. And Fido allows us to think differently and go at things differently. So I'm actually excited to see, especially with the guys that are coming on today, to really showcase exactly, why we need it and how we get going.
Well, that's quite a tease. So let's bring in Andrew Shikyar. Hey, Andrew, how you doing?
Hey, Gary, good to be with you again. And Ron, thanks for you really built us up pretty high here. So I'm going to try to meet your expectations today.
No
Andrew
pressure.
refrained from humor, Gary, so don't worry about it.
No pressure at all.
Okay, so you just tried to be funny, right? So you're going to have to stop that.
I said refrain from humor. So no jokes here. All business as always, Gary.
No. Actually, I'm sort of the opposite of that. I mean, our whole mission is to kind of pivot the industry from fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which is all, a lot to be afraid of and certainly doubtful for, but to fun. Everyone knows what FUD is, but what I'm learning after now listening to hundreds of people is everyone has different definitions of fun. So I'm going to ask you about the picture behind you, Andrew. What that looks like a fun picture. Tell us about that.
It's either a piece of modern art or something my 8-year-old did, but it's just a piece of art. It showed up one day. It's one of my wife's one of the many tasteful things she's done around her house. So.
Well, speaking of sort of showing up, maybe you can tell our audience how we met.
Yeah, Gary, you're really an inspiration. You were at a cyber conference and had this idea to kind of bring cybersecurity to the masses, raise more awareness by making it fun and interesting. And the whole idea of cyber superhero was really interesting. I don't know exactly where it stands in the comics and all that, but I think the idea is the right one. Cybersecurity is something that everyone should be aware of, both those of us in the industry on the back end, but also as it filters down to end users, to students, to administrators, groups like that. So anything we can do to raise more awareness and get people more educated is good. And I think you have a really unique approach, which is driven by your life story, which is why it's inspiring to a lot of people. And it's also very relatable to a lot of people who understand why you started what you have done. So yeah, that's how we met, and it's been a couple of years, and I've been really happy to see your growth and engagement, and even just a little intro video you've done. So you've really come a long way, and I'm very pleased and happy for your success.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. It means a great deal, from you. And the community with a capital C has been just unbelievably supportive, and I just thank goodness every day that I get to wake up and listen and learn to the smartest people on earth. And speaking of the smartest people on earth, say hi to Simon Law. Hey, Simon.
Hey Gary. Hey Ron. Good to see you again, Andrew.
Hey, good to see you, Simon. Great to be with you.
Hey, welcome to the show, Simon. So rumor has it that you're a pretty smart guy about all this stuff. Is that true?
I pretend to, yes. I pretend to be smart in this topic. Sometimes I get it right.
And you're humble too, which is one of the things that I've noticed. I really, this is true, after meeting hundreds of people now, you guys are, for the most part, incredibly humble. And I had the privilege of interviewing a general recently, and he said a quote that really stuck, which is reflective of all of you, and that is, "We serve in silence," and not anymore. So this platform is all about you. And Ron, you were the genesis of this show, and I know how important this subject matter is. So we're going to turn it all over to you.
Sure, that sounds great. I mean, as you know, I've been a huge Fido advocate for a number of years, and one thing that I actually want to start the show with. So I did have some questions that I was going to pose that I am going to pose to you guys, and of course, Gary, you're welcome to jump in. I think as well, and if you want to ask any. But one thing that popped up today again, which I thought was hilarious. And it comes back to the name. So when I was doing a post recently, or a lot, but I was posting about Fido today, and I said, everybody come on and learn more about Fido. And people want, at first the question was, it went to a very weird place again that said, what does that have to do with the dog? and I think, and I'm sure that this is not new. I'm sure, Andrew, you have heard this probably 1,000 times over when people start relating to, Fido and authentication technology to Scruffy. And, how do we, I mean, it's so funny. What do we do about that? How do we solve that?
Well, I don't think we need to solve it per se. If people associate it with a dog, I'm okay with that. I mean, so FIDO stands for Fast Identity Online. That's the acronym, but it was done deliberately. So a gentleman by the name of Bill Leddy at Visa was one of the early team from PayPal. Actually, he used to be there, and he's informed me of the actual root of this is from the Latin term fidelis, which means to trust, right? So in Fido, the dog means trustworthy, right? So the root is the same thing. A dog is a person's best friend, I would say, many people would say, but also it means to trust. So part of what we're trying to get across, of course, with Fido is that you can trust your login process. It's more safe, more secure, more trustworthy. So there is a fit there. We don't have a dog mascot or anything like that. I've seen renditions of our logos with dogs, unauthorized. So we stay away from that. But the benefits you'll see in a dog, you'll also see in Fido authentication.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I did know that. I didn't know the backstory, which is why we're here. I think to learn a lot of cool, interesting facts.
Inside scoop, yes.
Yes. So one question I have for you, Andrew, actually is really, what is Fido? I mean, you kind of went into it there briefly, but kind of looking at Fido and Fido Alliance, and where does Fido Alliance fit in? And did you creating the standards, and really just kind of give us a general overview of what Fido is and what it means to the world.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to keep it somewhat short because I could talk about this all day. So Fido was founded actually to address the data breach problem. So it was founded around 9 years ago by several companies, and everyone saw a plague in data breaches. But the tip of the spear in that battle is passwords. Passwords are the cause of the vast majority of data breaches. So that's what Fido's founders set out to address. So there is, we're two primary use cases at the onset of Fido. One is a biometric use case, where you can use your phone's biometric, which was a pretty new thing back then, to log in, instead of a password for re-authentication. The other use case was second factor, so having a strong security key or something to prove that you're in possession of the device in addition to a password. All right, so instead of something more insecure like an SMS OTP. So that was, Fido's, focus has been on reducing reliance on passwords, and we do this in three ways. First, we create technical standards like the ones I was talking about, and more recently we have what we call Fido 2. The latest set of specifications includes something called WebAuthn, which is a server-side API, and also device-side authenticators. So we create technical standards. We submit those to other standards bodies for formal standardization. Secondly, we run a certification program, which is, I think, really important for any standard. So we certify that products actually meet the specifications, that they interoperate, that they can work. So more and more we see enterprises requiring FIDO certified in their RFPs, as every enterprise should be doing, because that brings the benefit of open standards, the interoperability, the scalability, the lack of vendor lock-in, things like that. And the third thing we do is we run kind of market adoption and education programs. So both external marketing, your typical marketing mix of things like this, but also inside the membership we have deployment-oriented working groups that talk about specific use cases and share best practices on the best ways to work around common challenges and implement FIDO most effectively. So there's kind of internal discussion on that we externalize that through white papers and things like that. So that's what we do as an organization. We're very fortunate to have really everyone that we'd want to have sitting around the table collaborating, doing exactly that. FIDO is unique in kind of the standards landscape in that there's no real alternative effort going on. There's no VHS or no Betamax or RPHS. Yep. So it's there's this coalescence around FIDO, the unification, with everyone from including Apple, Microsoft, Google, Intel, Qualcomm, every major payment network, bank, all singularly focused on this mission, has allowed us to be, I think, quite successful in getting the specifications out, and then most importantly, actually seeing them adopted in market. Right. So right now, over 4 billion devices can support FIDO authentication. Over 86% of web browsers support FIDO. So in essence, if you're thinking about deploying FIDO, there we go. Wow, that's timely. That's an eye chart, but the key thing here is you see a lot of different operating system browser configurations, and it's largely green. And that means it's fully supported. So if you're thinking about deploying FIDO, there's a pretty good chance that your users will be on an eligible device. So that we're really happy with that and seeing that sort of progress, which is why you're now seeing more and more adoption happening in market. All right, so you can go to eBay, for example. Love talking about eBay. If you go to ebay.com on pretty much any device, you go to the website, log in, it'll give you the option of not using your password next time, using your device login instead. So all this is coming together quite nicely. We still have some work to do, a lot of work to do. But very happy with the general trajectory of the organization, the technology, and seeing the market start to move to this better way of user authentication.
And Andrew, just one quick question. This was an interesting graph that you had sent earlier. What are we looking at here?
I thought there was only going to be yes or no questions, Gary.
Wait.
Let's pull that up, please. Pull it up again. I'll walk us through it.
Hold it.
Yeah. Now that could be Simon's as well. I think I sent you some resources actually from Simon at Login ID. So anything you got from me is actually coming from Simon's end. So but we could definitely try to get Andrew to actually narrate Simon's stuff.
Let's bring Simon.
Role reversal.
Come on, Simon.
I just want to,
What are we looking at here?
So I think if you look at, and Andrew was saying, because of passwords, there's a lot of other solutions. I call it kind of Band-Aid solutions to solve the original password problem. But with the advent of FIDO, you really solve the core issue of it. So if you look at SMS, OTP, those are kind of what we call stopgap solutions in this whole fight against authentication and multi-factor authentication. So you look at SMS, OTP, people are starting to get familiar with that process, but there's always disadvantages of using SMS, because SMS is inherently not really secure, because you can have account takeovers by calling, for example, your mobile operator and changing your identity there. So this is what we call SIM swap attacks. There's hardware OTPs, really great, strong authentication. But again, it is hard to kind of get the user to adopt this. And then sometimes it is very costly, especially if it's a consumer-facing type of solution. Issuing a hardware OTP isn't very practical. So I'll give you an example. in other parts of the world, when you log into your online banking, you're given a hardware OTP. And I know it's, a logistical nightmare and also support just to get those types of devices out. And, a solution like Fido, which standardizes across the board, it is a great solution for that. And I didn't see that last part that you have there, proprietary smartphone biometrics. Yeah, so again, the Touch ID, Face ID, and whatnot, those are what we consider more proprietary. Fido runs on top of those standards as well, but now you got basically a single standard that run across the different types of operating systems. So it's actually really good because you have a singular kind of framework that you work with, and then you have it supported on all the different platforms. So to talk about like the history of Fido, I drank the Kool-Aid like 4 years ago, and when I met Andrew and Brett McDowell back then, I was really convinced of the mission. So actually, 2 years ago, I was actually working for Visa, and I quit and did login ID because I thought this mission was great. And one of the key things that I really thought was the turning point was with all the hard effort with guys like Andrew. They standardized what we consider all the hardware and operating side. Yeah, a lot of the solution, there's a chicken and an egg issue, right? And so Andrew and their mission really helped solve one side of the equation. And then the other side now is to get adoption out in the market. So I think that is a good part of the mission now. Andrew is trying to get everyone now to start adopting it, like the eBays of the world, which is there. And our mission now is to try to educate the market and get everyone adopting to it. And and they're very thankful for Andrew and the Fido Alliance team to actually solve one side of the equation, so that other companies like ourselves can start getting it used on the other side.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, that actually leads into kind of the question I had for you, Simon, is to, we know where kind of, where Andrew and the Fido Alliance kind of fits in with the standards and kind of getting the ball rolling, putting all the framework and everything in place. Now, when it comes to login ID, kind of handing off the baton a bit to you for the integration, where does login ID kind of fit into the process and say, and actually solve, some of the complexities and helping developers and companies actually get Fido integrated into their websites, applications, products, and into their business to actually help secure, authentication for their users and their clients?
Yeah, great question. So, like, for example, after the standardization, you got the big hardware manufacturers all the way from the chip level to the operating system. And then Andrew talked about Fido 2, which standardized the protocol onto the internet, called WebAuthn. Now it's part of the W3C standard. So you look at it, the whole entire technology stack is standardized now. And so now the other part of the equation is actually how to get websites and applications to start adopting it. So this is where, I saw the opportunity at Login ID is to actually provide a really seamless and simple developer experience, just to add a simple SDK in their mobile application or a couple lines of code on their web application. You'll be able to, utilize this, the standard, which is, I think, this is the key, right? To get out there and get people to adopt. So our mission at Login ID is just to make that process really simple for developers, to get them to start adopting the solution. Yeah.
Cool. And actually, just to give you a little bit of info, I mean, I was a bit of a lurker so I went on your site and I actually went to your developer docs and I actually went and grabbed the SDK just to try out a couple little things. And I actually came across one of your WordPress plugins because I actually know a lot of people with WordPress. And actually, I was amazed that with literally a few clicks of a button, I would say it took me less than 5 minutes to actually be able to log into my WordPress site with my thumbprint, as opposed to using, passwords and usernames and passwords. And one thing that really jumped out at me in the beginning is I think a lot of people go and they click the remember me button. Of course, they're leveraging session cookies and things like that. But I think what they don't realize is that, because I had someone mention to me, well, I don't really use my password. I just use the remember me, or I autofill. But in reality, your password is still in play. It eventually is going to come play. It can still be compromised. It can still be breached. So even if you're clicking remember me's, or you're, saying, keep me logged in for 365 days, which of course they shouldn't, they are still in play. They are still at risk. We are always at risk because they are still there. And they're not just at risk at the user end of it. From my perspective, you're at risk from a client and a customer and a company perspective, because you have to store those passwords on your database. And we know with supply chain attacks that those passwords are going to get out somewhere, somehow, someday, probably soon. They're coming to get you.
So that is why Fido solves it at the fundamental level. If you look at right now, Remember Me and password managers, again, those are stopgap solutions. They're basically storing the password in a more convenient way. What you need to really solve it as the fundamental way is right now, Fido, if you look at it, is a public-private key type of architecture where you have like public key residing on the server side. So in this case, login ID or the actual what they call relying party or the website. They hold on to this what they call public key, and on the device is where you have this private key, and it's stored very securely on typically a secure enclave or a trusted execution environment. So in this case, you solve the password problem, because passwords inherently is what they call a shared secret. So if you get compromised on one side, then that gets exposed, like with the breaches of Yahoo, LinkedIn, and all those. Those password breaches caused repercussions on the internet for a long time, right? So with Fido, the private key is actually inside the device, so it's really hard to have a massive attack unless you have some fundamental hardware issues in terms of the keys, and it's really hard to break these types of environment. The keys are actually distributed, and on the server side, you have public keys, right? So in the case if it does get breached, users just have to what we call revoke the public key and just re-sign up. It's not detrimental in any way, and it's just an inconvenience, so to speak. But you don't have basically a shared secret floating around anymore. You just have to revoke your public key and create a new one. So inherently is a much more secure solution. It solves the problem fundamentally. So that's why we're excited, because not only does it solve the problem fundamentally, it also makes the user experience really good. So rarely do you get the best of both worlds, where you get both strong security and strong and convenience. So right now, literally, swipe of your fingerprint, and you'll be able to log in, perform a payment transaction, sign a document. There's so many applications that can run off Fido, but it's really secure at the same time, right? But all these other solutions like text messaging, these OTPs, these password managers, they're all just stopgap solutions. So I'm really excited where, if you're talking about cybersecurity, security geeks, I love talking about that stuff, because, that really just solves the problem at the fundamental level. So, yeah.
So, a couple added thoughts on that. So first of all, Ron, I think you're spot on a lot of what you're saying. And Simon is also, obviously hit on the head. This issue of credentials, so we're on a journey towards passwordless, right? So it's not going to happen overnight. So the first thing we want to do is take, the more we take passwords out of the hands of users, the better, right? And so they can be less dependent on them. That allows them to have more complex passwords, or using a password manager or things like that. And things like device biometrics have done that for years now. The problem is there still is a password on a server that can and will be stolen. And we need to move those eventually to public keys, as Simon's saying, right? So, related to this, though, is there's a massive underreported issue with credential stuffing, right? When there's billions of credentials out there in the dark web, it's easy, for a cyber criminal to buy them for pennies and programmatically try stuffing them in all sorts of sites. So that the damage from the Yahoo data breach, for example, the damage wasn't immediate. It's kind of the ripple effect, or the ongoing cycle that generates, because then credentials are stolen, reused, stuffed to steal more credentials. And the cycle goes on and on and on. And the only way to kind of break that cycle is to break our dependence on passwords and public keys. So if someone steals a public key, as Simon was saying, the user convenience is small, but also there's no utility to that, right? I can't use it. It has no value to the hacker. So that's where, this changes that landscape dramatically. And that's where we, need to get to using Fido's approach to public key cryptography.
Yeah. Okay. And then the private key, of course, and actually that kind of led into one of my questions I actually had for you, which I think you answered really well there, Simon. Is the fact is that we do have a private and public key, and of course that would be a whole other show to kind of talk about the whole asymmetric key and cryptography. But I mean, the thing is that the key, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the private key is actually created on device. So if it's on my cell phone, it's never transferred. It doesn't go to Login ID. It doesn't go to the Fido Alliance. It doesn't go to my friend. The cat doesn't get it. I mean, it's something that's on my device that nobody actually knows. And I assume, now again, you have to correct me if I'm wrong. If I log in, let's say, to my website or to my bank, let's get real. I mean, people getting their bank accounts broken into is scary. So let's say I access the bank from my laptop, and then I access my bank account from my cell phone. Are there two completely different private keys? It
is. It's actually separate private keys, because in Fido, the two-factor, there's a couple of ways of doing multi-factor, but usually the one key point is that there's something that you have, which is where the private key is stored in the hardware. And then the other factor can be, password, a biometric, another PIN code, but usually, biometric is quite easy to execute. But that first factor is the hardware. So the key is tied to that particular hardware. And like you said, it's created in the hardware and never leaves the hardware. So that's why it's really secure. Yeah.
Another way to think about it is, I like to call it possession-based authentication. You need to be in possession of the device, to authenticate. So when you're authenticating locally, if you're using a biometric, another important thing that never leaves the device is the biometric as well.
Yes.
All right. So I'm activating, like I'm on a Lenovo ThinkPad here, and I use Windows Hello, but my keys stored here. I use the fingerprint or the camera to, basically verify myself and prove possession, and then the private key can have its discourse with the server.
Okay, cool.
We have a couple comments that are coming in, and we can all just take a look at this. Thanks. We appreciate the comment, Bobby. What do you think about what he was asking?
Yeah, great question. Andrew, you want to take it?
I'll start. Yeah, so this is a common use case, right? That we seek to address. So one way you can do it on a security key is really good here, right? So with FIDO2, you could actually have resident credentials in the key so that you can, log on to, shared devices, with that key and have it be specific to you. So that's a common use case, and that's one way that we're seeking to address it. Simon, I don't know if you're doing anything specifically with your SDK to optimize for this.
Yeah, so there's alternative is that we basically bring the key inside to the device, actually. So if you're going to a kiosk, right, you can actually potentially push the request out. And, Fido is working on the CTAP environment where you can actually have the local browser actually push it as well. But the point is you can actually push the authentication onto a mobile device, for example, and have you put the Fido authentication done on the device. And then that way your public kiosk will be able to log in through that other device. So now you don't really need to type in your password or put in any keys to the actual kiosk. You can have your own personal device being that.
Cool. Is that like almost like a federated, like a broker type scenario where you basically delegate the request over to something else on your behalf, and you have like a trusted relationship you make there?
Yeah. So in case of kiosk, you can, for example, say I log in with X service, and that X service has an application, or you've registered through your browser. You can do a push notification to your device, and then you'll be able to authenticate with your mobile device. So a good example, and you're starting to see this a little bit, is in iCloud, like when you buy a new iPhone, all your other devices wake up and they ask you, hey, do you want to accept this the new device as part of your ecosystem? And Amazon does a little bit something similar, but doesn't use. I don't believe they're using Fido yet. But they, when I go to a new machine and I log in, they're gonna pop my a request on my mobile phone and say, hey, was that you trying to log in? So we basically use the same thing, but then now you use the actual Fido protocol, so you know for sure that the resident private key is from that device. So it makes it much more secure. So the industry is starting to move in that direction. You're seeing a couple companies already doing that. We're going to try to massify that that thing so that you get that similar user experience everywhere.
Well, speaking of kind of massifying, Andrew, you and your team created a cool sort of communications piece that, of course, I love because, our team is involved in creating comics and superheroes. I'm going to pop up at least a little preview of what you all did. It's pretty cool.
Passwords are a pain. They're a hassle for customers and employees to manage, and they're a liability for your organization. All of those password resets cost you money, directly, every day. Plus, they expose you to data breaches, which can cost you even more money and damage your reputation. Your customers feel the pain too. The average internet user has to juggle up to 90 different passwords. No wonder frustrated users abandon their carts. Some just use the same passwords over and over again. Risky behavior for them and for you. Ready for the good news? There is a better way, easier and safer. You can protect your brand with a technology called Fido. Fido is a standard that allows security technology to be built directly into any device. With Fido, users can securely sign into any website without relying on a password. Like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, Fido is supported on devices that people use every day, such as smartphones, personal computers, tablets, or smartwatches. Fido lets users log in with a simple fingerprint or face scan, or the touch of a security key. Fido is also safe. Thanks to public key cryptography, sensitive login information resides securely on a user's device, nowhere else. Fido is bad news for cybercriminals. It prevents even the most sophisticated phishing attacks. They can't steal users' passwords and take over accounts because you don't rely on passwords. You use Fido. With Fido, logging in goes from frustrating to easy, and from risky to fully secure. Now, instead of annoying your customers or losing them, you make them happy. And happy customers are good for business. The worldwide tech industry is working together to make Fido the future of logins, and many large service providers are already using it to protect their customers. The Fido iMark tells users they can log in quickly and easily. Passwords? Who needs them? Fido logs your users in without the liability of passwords. Safe and easy, saving you a lot of headaches and improving your bottom line. Learn more today at loginwithfido.com.
Wow, the only thing I have to say about that is bravo.
I gotta say, I love that video. Of all the things we've done as a marketing team, I think that's the coolest asset we've created. And the superhero, by the way, is loosely well. First of all, it's a nod to you, Gary, and the cyber heroes that you've done. But that's modeled off of our superhero, Megan Shamus, who's our director of marketing, who is a superhero in her own way, and that's kind of, we think that's her in the video there as well. So yeah, it's a nice piece. I would encourage people to go to that website, loginwithfido.com. It has, we created this as a consumer for two purposes. One, to start being able to educate consumers on how to use Fido, but also there's two pieces to that page. The other piece is targeted at service providers. So I hear from a lot of relying parties or service providers like, hey, look, I need something to help me sell internally. So that video is meant to become an internal sales tool. There's all sorts of assets on the site that explain why and how to move to Fido. We'll be investing more in this site, adding examples of sites that are live with Fido and other kind of valuable resources for the broader industry.
And one of the cool things about this industry and why I feel so lucky to be a tiny part of it is that when smart people get together, good things happen. We've done a joint venture with an Israeli company to take our characters and bring them into a 3D virtual training platform with disposable goggles that people can interact with. And here's kind of a world premiere of Phoebe the Fisher. When Phoebe's done, she'll have a harpoon in her quiver, which is like for whale fishing. She'll have a spear, for spear fishing, and then she'll have a fishing rod for spraying prey. So say hi to almost a world premiere of a prototype. We're just working on movement and shadows and stuff.
I'm Phoebe Fisher. The fisher hunts its prey by pretending to be legitimate communication from a trusted company or from the hijacked identity of a friend, colleague, or family member. Using one of many ruses, the fisher encourages the potential victim to divulge sensitive information such as login IDs, passwords, PINs, social security numbers, etc. This information is quickly used to steal money from accounts and to apply for fraudulent loans and credit cards.
So that's that's Phoebe. We're working on a script now for a 90-second animation that we're just essentially calling "Working Anywhere." So it can be all these best practices about how to stay secure, working anywhere, I think we have a fan. Thanks, Bobby.
Cool. Yeah, I mean,
the scary thing is Phoebe would be successful, not to be all downer, but Phoebe would be successful around half the time with spear phishing. Phishing is wildly successful, and the fact of the matter is, a well-designed phishing email has over 50% success rate, not just click rate, success rate. And we saw a massive spike, like exponential spike in phishing attacks right after the pandemic hit. So it's important work you're doing there with Phoebe to educate people on, what phishers are and the tools they need to put in place to help people protect themselves. Because at the end of the day, all of us around the table would probably fail, wouldn't fail to spot every phishing attack. So you need to put Fido authentication in the hands of users to help prevent phishing. Because as Simon said before, and as we were talking about possession-based authentication, part of the goal here is to stop scalable attacks. Right? No one can stop, you can't stop, an individual brute force attack of someone making me insert my security key or something. But the scalable attacks, that's what's threatening the ongoing success of the network economy, and that's what we need to prevent.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing too, I think that when everybody adopts Fido, Phoebe might actually get a little bit of a break. At least they're not going to get the passwords. Of course, they might get some other things. So yeah. So Phoebe, we'll give you a break here once we get Fido to a lot more people. But so I was thinking that I know we're getting a little late in the show, so I had just a couple more questions for you guys. So to kind of start with you, Andrew, just to what do we have to look forward to? What's coming out from Fido and the Fido Alliance coming up in the next in the future? The next, let's say, 2 years, 5 years. Kind of what does that roadmap look like?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So first of all, trying to see drive more and more adoption, and Simon expressed it appropriately. This is kind of an egg hatching activity. So we have the devices in the hands of users. What Simon and Login ID are doing is absolutely wonderful. To be able to empower developers to more easily use Fido. And like the WordPress plugin, Gary, I thought that deserved a wow, one of the wow images that you have, because to be able to allow any web developer to basically add Fido logins to their site, through a common web platform. There it is. Thank you. That's remarkable, and those are the types of innovations that will really allow Fido to start happening at scale. So driving adoption. Now, it's not as easy as just allowing someone to do it. What we've learned is that we need to think really closely about the user experience. And so a very important project we're doing right now is developing UX guidelines. And this is based on extensive research we've been doing on how to drive people to understand what Fido is, how to get them to enroll, how to incorporate some of the marks. So you saw the I mark on that, for example, to get users to enroll and to have that be as smooth of an experience as possible. So, because there's a lot of nuance there. Let's say that. So that's an important initiative that we have. A little further afield, if you remember the chart that Simon walked us through that talked about the different threat areas and the green, yellow, red, one of the challenges for Fido, frankly, in any sort of possession-based approach to user authentication is account recovery. And so we're doing some new kind of standardization certification work in regards to the initial onboarding of users, right? Because right now we tell people if you lose your authenticator, one of the suggestions is to have your users re-enroll. That's not really a great approach, because that's where social engineering and other sorts of techniques can be used to drive account takeovers. So we're driving some really important innovative work around identity verification and identity proofing, starting with certifying the vendors that provide those services, but ultimately making sure that they're all using kind of a possession-based approach to account onboarding, which will allow for a possession-based approach to account recovery.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I'd love to add to that. Like Andrew hit, that's very exciting that we're standardizing that process, because the pinnacle of this, guys, is not only having strong authentication. That's the mission of Fido, but the mission is expanding into identity, because really, not only do you want to know that's the same person logging in or authenticating, you also want to know that's actually Simon or Andrew as well, right? So that's really extremely important. So the marriage of strong identity and strong authentication, I feel that's going to be the next thing. And actually, the reality is that's where the fraud will be as well, because as we move Fido along, a lot of the attacks will be, that's where not the attack will be. It'll be very hard. They're going to try to do the social engineering and try to hit the identity side. So if we can strengthen that piece of the puzzle as well, then you can have both strong identity and strong authentication. You really make a huge dent in the industry. And so we're really excited actually to see how that pans out. And we're actually working a little bit outside the standards, trying to figuring out that for some of our clients that we have. So I'd love to see actually how Andrew, how that working group comes up, but that's extremely exciting. I also know that there's something with IoT as well. Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So these two things actually happened at the same time. So a couple of years ago, Fido announced that we're expanding our scope to take on two new work areas. One is the identity verification work, and the other is IoT. And simply put, we're trying to take the passwords out of both of those processes. So just last week, time's flying. Yeah, just last week. We're living in dog years in Fido land. Just last week, we announced the launch of our IoT spec called Fido Device Onboard. Really important work in the IoT space. This is, not necessarily consumer IoT, but looking at ways of taking the password dependency and allowing for automatic authentication to IoT devices at point of manufacture, running across different cloud service providers. In a very kind of seamless way. So this spec has been released. It was driven, like everything in Fido, by a cross section of members. So by Intel, Qualcomm, ARM, basically everyone on the chipset side of the industry, along with cloud service providers like Google and Microsoft and folks like that. So very excited about the spec. We're seeing a very positive response to that. And we'll be building on that IoT work moving forward as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I went and shared out actually the IoT spec through a lot of my social channels, and there was actually a lot of interest, a lot of excitement about that, because there's a reason why they call it Internet of Threats. Is it's it has been really it hasn't, security has always been, not even in a lot of cases, not even a second thought. It hasn't even been included into the design of the products in the IoT world at all, right? So it's very important to see that you guys are getting involved here.
Fido's tagline is simpler, stronger authentication. So I think there's two sides you got to look after all these things. Whether it's user authentication, it's partly security, obviously, but it's also about user experience. And more we're actually seeing engagement with UX leads and marketing leads, for Fido authentication. Likewise, IoT, absolutely, it's about security, but it's also about simplicity. So that's why we're focused on the device onboarding and making it much easier than it was in the past, and much cheaper, much faster. Which will bring efficiencies to all sorts of implementations.
I'm actually, one more thing that I want to add that's really exciting and near and dear to my heart, because I was part of the payments, is that there's another spec coming out of W3C called Secure Payment Confirmation. That spec is really exciting, because I see that now Fido is going to be used in the payments scenario, and so that's kind of something that back in my days when I was in the background payments, that's super exciting as well. So now that you get not only logging in or authenticating, now you can authenticate and execute actually payment transactions. So think about kind of a one-click experience now, but with really strong backing of Fido, and now you can actually execute a transaction. So that is extremely exciting, and with a single standard, it's going to be ubiquitous as well. And I know that the payment networks and also all the banks are very supportive of that. So I think within the next couple of years as well, you'll see a lot of movement there. And Login ID is extremely supportive of that and coming up with solutions there. So we're going to want to see that as well being adopted in payments as well.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Now, one thing too, Simon, is kind of to put your question that I gave to Andrew is, what do we have to look forward to? What's coming down the road and in the pipe for login ID over the next little while onto the future? Kind of, where you're looking to take Fido and take login ID and to really make all of this come together for everyone.
Yeah, I think the use cases that I see, obviously there's a lot of use cases for Fido. Right now, the immediate things that we see is trying to help out in terms of payments. So really you get that seamless user experience, not only for logins, but now you get really strong authentication for payments. Now, the advantage of that is that a lot of the fraud is can take out so it makes the overall system cheaper. And then the cost of a transaction to be lower as well. So that's where the advantage of adopting this solution is. If you look at it, the reason why merchants have to pay this high interchange fee is that they have to factor in all this fraud that comes in, right? So that with the advent of Fido, you take away a lot of that fraud, then eventually the ecosystem, the per transaction fees actually will be reduced. Another area that I saw, that I mentioned before, was identity. So matching strong identity with strong authentication is also really exciting. Something that we're not working on, but I think that's really cool is Andrew might be able to talk a little bit, but applications like IDaaS and digital signatures, that's extremely exciting as well. So think of like DocuSign, but now using your Fido authenticator to sign your documents. That's extremely important. And maybe Andrew, you can talk about a little bit about how IDaaS in Europe is, looking at Fido.
Before you get that, Andrew, actually, just kind of interesting, as Gary calls them, Einstein moments. I just actually had a client of mine come out to me today because I told him about the Fido show, and he said, "I don't think, can you let me know when we're going to get that, because I have a lot of issues with document signing and fraud. When is Fido coming to DocuSign?" So I just actually had a CEO of a company reach out to me today and ask me that exact question. So here comes the answer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So there are signing capabilities, and that's used in IDaaS, which is it's a European initiative for those who aren't familiar. So it stands for, I think, Electronic Identification, Authentication, and Services. So it basically builds a legal basis for cross-border interoperability of electronic identity and documents and signatures across the EU member states. And so we've actually done white paper on this, and we've had some webinars on this where we have much more detail on it. But in essence, you can use Fido authenticators to do this signing and to authenticate the user to the identity. And by tying into the IDaaS framework, it allows it to be recognized across states. And so we've seen some implementation. The Czech government's actually used Fido in an implementation to support this, and we look forward to more broader acceptance or more utilization in Europe for this. But absolutely, there's other adjacent or similar use cases beyond that implementation where Fido can be used as well. In general, one of my favorite things about my job and what I do at Fido is working with companies like Simon's, and just seeing the level and the pace of innovation in the Fido ecosystem. It's really phenomenal. For something that seems very straightforward, everyone has a different perspective on it and a different wrinkle that all adds value. So whether it's you're talking about spurring us into to signing or into SDKs and developers, it's just really fascinating to see and very validating for the founders of Fido. I'm sure to see their vision really coming to reality in this dynamic shape and form. It's fantastic.
Cool. Yeah. So as we could just go on and on. I mean, this is incredibly interesting. Can I invite you guys back sometime in the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Did you have fun?
Always, Gary. Always.
Yeah, me too. I just have a couple more things, actually, Gary, and they're very quick. Just to kind of close things out is just so for Andrew and Simon, you can follow up as well. Is that obviously we want more people to get to look into Fido and to get adoption and to start kind of start down that path. So Andrew, I mean, how do people find out more information about what you do and about Fido and actually joining us as a Fido partner, getting Fido certified, all of that good stuff? I mean, where do they go? How do they get started in that?
Yeah, so I mean, go to the website, FidoAlliance.org. That's kind of the core website of Fido Alliance. So we do have some other initiatives where people can also look into. So Fido, and that's our core site. So you can't go wrong by going there. I talked about the login with Fido.com site. That's another site we've produced that kind of more focused on kind of consumer and implementation side of things. And then most recently, we've launched a conference series called Authenticate. So that is at authenticatecon.com. We were meant to have our first conference last June. Obviously, that got turned into a virtual event, but the virtual event was wildly successful. We had 2 weeks of awesome content, all of which is also on our website to see. And then we turned that into 2 different things. One, a virtual summit series. So every quarter we kind of do a deep dive. So not a 1-hour webinar, but like a 3-hour type thing on different topics. So we had one back in March on financial services. The next one we're doing is actually focused on Europe. So if you want to learn more about Fido and EIDAS, it's a good time to do that. So that's one series we have, but also we're going to have the conference. So we will have a physical event in Seattle on October 18th to 20th. So I'd encourage people to attend that if they can do. We're also seeking speakers. So we have an open call for speakers. So Ron, sounds like, and Gary, come on in, submit your papers.
Simon,
happy to have your talk. So.
Yeah.
So if anyone has opinions on Fido, if you're an expert, apply to speak. Otherwise, please do plan on traveling and seeing us in person and attending that event in Seattle in October.
That's awesome. And Simon, I guess, really for you to kind of close this out is, how do people learn more about Login ID and really, getting started and getting, Fido integrated into their products, into their companies, into their life, into their culture. Let's get Fido into everything out there. And of course, you're the guy that can make that happen. So
yeah,
let us know.
Yeah. So actually our the name of our company is Login ID. So just type in loginid.io and check out our website. One of the key things that we want to make is developers. So yeah, I'd love to get feedback from the community. We actually have, basically a freemium model. We really want to support the startup community as well. So you can actually pretty much use all our solution for free. Once you find that your solution is, you need a high level of support or SLAs, then you can go into our paid subscription. But the point here is that we really want to get the adoption. It's not really just a login ID, but you get the benefit if everyone's actually getting into this space. And we love to kind of both, similar mission of Andrew's is get the word out there and get everyone to start using this solution.
Perfect. I think we did a good job today of chipping away at that. You guys did fantastic. It was absolutely a privilege to be here with you and to hear about it and see what's coming. And I've been a fan of Fido for many years, and I was pushing it back and before a long time ago as well. So I was very excited. I'm actually really happy to be here, and I really appreciate you guys coming, and I really appreciate Gary you being the host and providing this platform for this discussion. It was fantastic.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let me show you something coincidentally. This is a character that we created for one of our editions that is a combination of a dog and a drone. So all this talk about Fido, say hi to Drog, D-R-O-G. And the way we use Drog is the character flies into the scene and offers best practices and advices and advice about how to do things no matter what it is. So that's a Drog. So I actually love the name Fido. I mean, just I'll sort of end the way we began. I think it's great. So speaking of kind of new beginnings, I'm going to take this moment to do like a pre announcement. It's sort of like the freemium model, Simon. I've donated everything for 4 years. My wife thinks I'm batshit, and we've got to start doing something to put some food on the table. So we have a freemium model, and we're now going to be offering memberships to the Cyber Hero Network. And this is something that's really, kind of never been done. And our vision is to kind of rethink the conference ecosystem. So it's kind of the opposite of pay for play and that kind of thing. It's all about thought leaders. And, just recently, a data scientist did me a favor because someone asked about who's our audience. these are the people who I've invited and who have connected with me on LinkedIn one at a time. Which is really quite extraordinary. I sort of couldn't believe my eyes when I saw, who this sort of LinkedIn audience is. And it's all high-level thought leaders, people like you guys. And so as a result of that, just similar to you, Andrew, we're launching a series of cybersecurity and AI think tanks that are going to be focusing on the nexus of and the importance of artificial intelligence across CISA's 16 critical infrastructure sectors. And we'll be doing these once a month. And it's going to be kind of an exclusive thing. That's what this is here. So if there's anyone out there who wants to become a member, it includes all types of interesting benefits that we've kind of never seen before and came from just listening and learning from the smartest people in the world about all this stuff. If you, a member of our audience, want to be on the show, just send an email to Gary@cyberheroescomics.com. And on behalf of a grateful digital universe, Andrew, thanks so much for what you do and your relentless efforts to try to keep us all safe online. And Simon, it sounds like you're doing some really cool stuff, and we really appreciate that. And Ron, as always, you represent the unsung cyber heroes who toil in anonymity to keep us safe at work, at home, at school. So with that note, I hope everyone had a great time and stay safe out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.